What's up, everyone? Welcome to the May 10th edition of DraftKings Tournament Plays presented by Prize Picks. I'm your host, Adam Scherer. You can follow me on Twitter at ShipMyMoneyDFS. And as a reminder, you get one free month of Awesemo plus Platinum when you sign up and make a deposit at Prize Picks. Be sure to use the code Awesemo to receive a 100% first deposit bonus up to $100. Tonight we have a 12-game MLB slate. Once again, no weather concerns, so should be good to go on that front. Can get your lineups made relatively early once they start being released. Shouldn't have to scramble for games being postponed or make any decisions on delays or anything like that. So should be a pretty relaxing slate as far as that goes. As usual, we're going to take a look at three of the top tournament options, three of the top tournament stacks, and three of the top tournament pitchers on DraftKings using the top stacks tool and the top pitchers tool. Starting with the top stacks, the San Francisco Giants are taking on Antonio Senzatella tonight in San Francisco. Not a great park for hitters. The worst in baseball, actually. But they do have a 4.4 implied run total going up against Senzatella. He's never been a good strikeout pitcher. When he's at his best, he does a good job of keeping the ball on the ground and inducing soft contact. But pitchers like that have a very small margin for error. So far this year, a 4.73 xFIP for Senzatella. The Giants are projected for about 2% ownership with about a 4% chance of being the top stack on tonight's slate. They have been good offensively this year as well so far with a 107 WRC+. Brandon Belt was a late scratch last night with, I believe, a neck issue. So that is one thing to keep an eye on. The lineup does get a bit weaker if Belt is out. But one way or the other, it looks like a good spot for the Giants going up against Senzatella tonight in San Francisco. Number two, the Chicago White Sox are taking on Cal Quantrill in Chicago. 4% projected ownership going to the White Sox, 5% chance of being the top scoring stack. Quantrill has not been very good to start this season. He has a 5.09 xFIP through his first 5 starts. His strikeout numbers haven't been particularly good either. He's only struck out 14.8% of hitters. He's walked 13% of the hitters that he's faced. Putting extra guys on base for a lineup that does have power, like the White Sox, is a recipe for disaster. It's likely that the White Sox are in favorable RBI situations, favorable hitting spots throughout the game. They have a 4.3 implied run total tonight, and there's just plenty of power in this lineup. So far this season, they do only have a 90 WRC+, but when you look at the names in this lineup, you expect that to come up. When you have Tim Anderson, Luis Robert, Jose Abreu, Yasmani Grandal, Yohan Moncada, Tim Anderson, like these guys are all accomplished major league hitters. We know what to expect. We know they're going to get better. So just a good spot for Chicago tonight going up against Quantrill. And number one, the New York Mets taking on Patrick Corbin in Washington. 11% projected ownership going to the Mets, 11% chance of being the top stack. They have a 5.3 implied run total tonight against Corbin and the Nats. 117 WRC+ for the Mets so far this season is one of the best in baseball. They rank fourth. They're tied with the Yankees for fourth, I should say. And you can just look at their lineup and get an idea of the amount of power that's in there. They have pretty solid hitters throughout their lineup. Nimmo at the top, lefty, but from the right side against Corbin, you have Kana, Lindor, Alonso, Escobar, Starling Marte. JD Davis has power from the right side. So really a deep lineup here for the Mets, and they are in a good spot against Corbin, even getting relatively high ownership on a 12-game slate, still projected to be the highest or to be the top stack the highest percentage of the time, not really projected to go over owned. Now, looking at the top 3 pitchers, number 3, Garrett Whitlock is $7,700. He's projected for about 10% ownership with a 10% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. He has a relatively difficult matchup with the Atlanta Braves. Atlanta has a 99 WRC+ so far this season, but they've been without Acuna for most of the year. He's now back in the lineup. They do have a 25% strikeout percentage this year as well, though, and Whitlock has been excellent so far. He's worked both as a long reliever and as a starter. Overall this year, he has a 35.8% strikeout percentage and a 2.11 xFIP. In his starts, he actually has an even higher strikeout percentage at 39.1%. I don't expect that to continue. I do think that you see his strikeout percentage start to come down from that 35.8% mark as he makes more starts. But at $7,700, when you're talking about anybody with a strikeout rate even remotely close to 35%, there's obviously a lot of upside there. He threw 78 pitches in his last start. That was the most he's thrown this season. So it seems likely that he can get you into the 90 pitch range if he's pitching well tonight. The Braves do have a 4.1 implied run total. That should keep the ownership down a little bit. But as I said, about a 10% chance of being a top 2 pitcher for Whitlock and about 10% ownership projected for him as well. Number 2, Jesus Luzardo, $9,100 price tag. 10% projected ownership, 11% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. He's taking on the Arizona Diamondbacks tonight, who somewhat surprisingly have a 4 implied run total. Luzardo struggled last year for Oakland, but prior to that, remember, he was one of the top pitching prospects in baseball. Then he really struggled last year. He was traded to Miami as part of the Starling Marte trade, but he's been excellent to start this season. He has struck out 33.3% of the hitters that he's faced. He has a 2.89 xFIP, and Arizona is not a good team offensively, despite the fact that they have had some decent games recently. Overall this year, an 83 WRC plus and a 25.1% strikeout percentage for Arizona. It looks like a very, very good spot for Luzardo to continue his strong start to the season. And number 1, Kyle Wright, a healthy $10,000 price tag tonight going up against the Boston Red Sox. He's only projected for about 5% ownership with a 16% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. Now, the one thing you want to keep in mind here is that the chances of being a top 2 pitcher, he's expensive. So if you roster him, it's going to be difficult to get some other guys that you want into your lineup. And that's part of why his chances of being a top 2 pitcher are so much higher than his ownership. You're talking not about optimal lineup percentages. You're talking about chances of being a top 2 pitcher. A little bit different. Doesn't account for the salary like optimal lineup percentage would, but you still get a feel from that gap that he's likely going a bit under-owned here. And he's been very good so far this season. He has struck out 30.6% of hitters. He has a 2.6 xFIP. He's going up against the Red Sox, who have been atrocious with an 80 WRC plus and almost a 22% strikeout percentage at the plate this season. One big reason why Wright's ownership is not going to be very high as well is that he's $10,000. Justin Verlander's only $400 more. Aaron Nola's $1,100 less. Robbie Ray is $1,700 less. Giolito is $300 less. There's a lot of pitchers to pay up for tonight that just look a little bit better than Kyle Wright, but that's going to drive down the ownership, and you're still going to get a pitcher with very good strikeout stuff, a high ceiling at low ownership. So to recap, the top 3 tournament stacks on tonight's slate: number 3, the San Francisco Giants; number 2, the Chicago White Sox; and number 1, the New York Mets. And the top 3 tournament pitchers: number 3, Garrett Whitlock; number 2, Jesus Luzardo; and number 1, Kyle Wright.